Hi everyone, we're going to go ahead and start looking at 3.3 graphing linear functions when we are in point slope form. Again, it is still a linear function, so it will still graph a straight line. But this form is y minus y1 is equivalent to m times x minus x1. So we're going to use that information to find some key pieces. Now, when we're in point slope form, this formula actually gives me a point on the graph and it gives me the slope or the rate of change. So when we're looking at this, we're going to be looking for m, which is going to be the slope, and we're going to be looking for x1 and y sub 1. Okay, these are a point on the line. So looking at the equation here, and whenever we see this formula or this type of setup, we're going to be looking for first the rate of change. The rate of change is the m value. The next thing that we're going to be looking for that it gives us nicely is a point. So it's going to give us x sub 1, and that's part of the point here, x sub 1. And then we're going to have y sub 1, which is the x and the y value for a point on the graph. Now, the next two pieces that we're going to look for are not easy to look at and see, but they're not very difficult to find either. So we're going to look for two more points. We're going to look for the x-intercept and the y-intercept. In order to find the x-intercept, we replace y with 0 and solve for x. And in order to find the y-intercept, we substitute in 0 for x and find the y. So let's go ahead and go over to example 1. So here, Amanda has $180 in her school lunch account after 1 week. So that's important. Week 1, she has $180. She spends $30 each week on school lunches. So if she spends money, that means it's a negative 30. The relationship between how much she spends each week, W, and how much she has in her account, A, is represented by this function. Graph the relationship. Well, I'm going to look for those four pieces that I said I'm going to find. So the rate of change, the point, x sub 1, y sub 1, the x-intercept, and the y-intercept. Well, we know that at 1 week she had $180, but she actually started at week 0. So at week 0, we got to find out how much money she had. Now that there is going to be the y-intercept. All right. The next thing, I look at this table and they're talking about A and W. So if A is equivalent to Y and W is equivalent to X, it's okay to change the values in the equation when we're starting out, because sometimes I find that variable change is causing some confusion. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and do this, replacing A with Y and W with X. And then we'll come back to those at the very end and replace them again with the correct variables. So I have Y minus 180 equals negative 30 times x minus 1 times the group x minus 1. Now, first off, what is the rate of change? What is the slope? That is negative 30. The next piece I look for is what is the point? What is x sub 1 and y sub 1? So when we're looking at this, x sub 1 is negative 1. Now, when x minus 1, when we take that out, the opposite of that is going to be positive 1. Then I have negative 180, and the opposite of that is positive 180. So there's a point. Now the next piece I'm going to look for is the x-intercept. So when I want the x-intercept, I'm going to replace y with 0. So I have 0 minus 180 is equal to negative 30 times x minus 1. Replace y with 0 and we'll find the x-intercept. So just calculating this, 0 minus 180 is negative 180. Then I have negative 30 times x minus 1. Divide both sides by negative 30. So then I have 6 equals x minus 1. Add 1 to the other side. So I have 7 is equal to x. So my x-intercept was 7, 0. Okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and find the y-intercept. Doing the same thing, but this time not replacing the y with 0. Instead, we're going to replace x with 0. So I will have y minus 180 is equal to negative 30 times the value of 0 minus 1. Y minus 180 is equal to 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 30 is positive 30. Add 180 to the other side. So I have y is equal to 210. So my y-intercept, we made x 0. We substituted that in. And then we got 210 for our y value. Okay. So now we have 4 pieces. Our rate of change, x sub 1, y sub 1 point, the x-intercept, and the y-intercept. Now, let's go ahead and graph those. So the first point I'm going to graph is 180. So 180. The next point I'm going to graph is the x-intercept, 7, 0. Then I'm going to graph the y-intercept, 0, 210. Now, that is enough that I can see that it's going to be linear, that we can connect that. But if you're not sure, we can go ahead and use the slope to help us out. That means we are going to go down 30 and right 1. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this point here, and I'm going to go down 10, 20, 30, and right 1, and I'm going to put another point there. If I do that again, 10, 20, 30, right 1. 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 10, 20, 30, and we land on the y-intercept. Now I can see that this definitely is linear. So if you weren't sure the first time, we have this here. Now, she started with $210, and as she decreases each week, she gets down to $0 at the end of 7 weeks. After 7 weeks, she'd either have to get more money or she cannot buy more lunch, okay? We can't go backwards in time, so I can't look at -1 weeks or -2 weeks. We only start at 0 weeks. So here, now it's asking me, what is the domain? Well, the domain is our x values. So our x values were between 0 and 7. Okay, so we're looking at these here, between 0 and 7. So our domain is x was greater than or equal to 0 weeks, less than or equal to 7 weeks. Now the range is talking about the y value. So when we're looking at y, she had $0 and she went all the way up to $210, what she started with. So, or she has $0 now. So the range y is greater than or equal to $0, less than or equal to $210. And this here is talking about the amount of money. So don't forget though, we switched it to X and Y. They had W and A. So this is where I'm actually going to go back, change it back just in case my answers are using their variables. 0 is less than or equal to W, less than or equal to 7. Y was originally A. So I have A is greater than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 210. Okay. Again, you didn't have to change A and W into X and Y in the very beginning. I just feel like we're more comfortable with X and Y, so we're more comfortable solving it and then just putting it back where it needs to be at the end. The choice is completely yours. All right, let's go on to the next page and let's look at example 2. So a fresh cup of coffee has been cooling down at a constant rate and can be represented by this equation, which represents the relationship between the number of minutes the coffee has been cooling and the temperature T in degrees Fahrenheit of the coffee. Graph the function to determine and interpret the following. Now, on this question, it's not included what the temperature of the room is. So an average room depends on, how cool you guys keep your home or your office where you're at. So, and let's say in my house, I keep it at like 75 degrees. So that would be what I would consider, but they didn't say. So on this example, I'm actually going to just go with how long will it take the coffee to get to 0 degrees if we had a room that was 0 degrees. Okay, that's going to help us find the X and the Y intercept. So that's all I'm looking at here. So even though we don't have a graph, we're still going to find those 4 pieces. Now remember, those 4 pieces we are looking for is the rate of change. We're looking for the point X sub 1 and Y sub 1. We're looking for the X intercept, and we're looking for the Y intercept. Now, when we want the X intercept, we're trying to find X by making Y 0. When we want the Y intercept, we're trying to find Y by first making X 0. So let's find these 4 pieces. Okay, so again, let's change that to Y for T. And X for M. If you want to challenge yourself, leave them the same and let's see how we do. Okay. All right, so here we go. What are the pieces that we're looking for? Let's look for the slope. So the slope on this one, the rate of change is -2, or you can write it as -2/1. Since I don't actually have to put this one on a graph, I'm okay with just -2. Then the point X sub 1, Y sub 1. Okay, so I have -4, so that's going to be +4. And I have -84, which is going to be +84. Now the X and Y intercept are the ones that take a little bit of evaluating, but nothing too challenging. So we're going to write the equation. First time, I'm going to replace Y with 0. So I have 0 minus 84 is equal to -2 times X minus 4. Okay. 0 minus 84 is just -84. Now I'm going to take this -2 times the group and I'm going to divide by that instead. So -84 divided by -2 gives me +42. Now I'm going to take this -4, move it to the other side, so that becomes +4, which gives us +46. So we have 46 for X because we plugged in 0 for Y. That is our X-intercept. Now let's find the Y-intercept. So we have Y minus 84 is equal to -2 times 0 minus 4. So Y minus 84 is equal to 0 minus 4 is -4. -4 times -2 is +8. Take the -84, move it to the other side, and we have Y is equivalent to 92. Oops, didn't want to box that one. So our Y-intercept, we substitute in 0 for X, and we have 92 for Y. All right, so now we have our four pieces. We have the rate of change. We have x sub 1, y sub 1 point. And then we have our x-intercept and our y-intercept. So now let's go answer all these questions. So what is the x-intercept? The x-intercept is 46, 0. What is our y-intercept? Well, that's 0, 92. Now, again, this is assuming that we're waiting for the coffee to get to 0 degrees in a location where the coffee is set and it gets to 0 degrees. Again, in my house, my coffee would never get to 0 degrees. Even if you had coffee or hot chocolate, it's not going to get to 0 degrees because no one has their house that cold. Okay. What is the rate of change? The rate of change is the slope. So m equals -2. What is the domain? Now, the domain is talking about the x values. So when we're talking about the domain or the values of x, we can look at all three of these ordered pairs that we have. We can look at x in all of them if we wanted to, okay? Here we have x is 4. Here we have x is 46. Here we have x is 0, all right? We want the smallest x value and the largest x value. 4 falls somewhere in the middle. So we're not too worried about 4, okay? But we are looking at 0 and 46. So out of those two, 0 is the smallest. Now, because we said we're trying to see how long it takes to get to 0, okay, or how long it takes to get to 0 degrees, we're going to consider that starting at 0 minutes when my coffee was hot. And then how long does it take to get to 0 degrees? And the other x value is 46. So this is talking about minutes. Okay. Now for the range is talking about the y values. Now, again, we have three y values we can look at: 84, 0, and 92. The one that's not important to us right now is 84, because we're looking for the smallest and the largest. So the range is the y values. Okay, so y is talking about temperature. The coldest we're trying to get it to is 0 degrees. The hottest that it was when it was first made, or when we first got it, was 92 degrees. And this here is talking about temperature. So if you want to go back and change those variables, which we should because that's what they use, we had x was actually replacing, excuse me, x was replacing m. So m was between 0 and 46, that's minutes. T was replaced by y for temperature, which was between 0 and 92. Okay, so finding those four pieces that we talked about at the very beginning really do help us. Okay, and finding the slope and the y-intercept are actually, finding the slope and a point, x sub 1, y sub 1, are really helpful as well, and they're really easy just by looking at the equation. If you have any questions on this, let me know. Otherwise, check out those other videos if you're missing any.